Hello and welcome. This podcast is brought to you by Industrial Info Resources. Since 1983, we have been providing global market intelligence on the energy and industrial markets. And through the combination of our trusted data, which is validated and qualified direct from source, and our analytics and forecasting tools and solutions, we help our customers stay connected and in tune with the latest project and investment opportunities and those trends occurring across the world. My name is Shaheen Chauhan. I am the Vice President of Global Analytics at Industrial Info Resources. I'm based in our Dubai office, and I've been with the company about 15 years now. Now, to help unpack these insights, I am delighted to be joined by Shane Mullins, who is our VP for Energy Products and Markets, and he has a specific expertise in natural gas markets. And I'm also joined by Britt Burt, who is our Senior VP of Power Research Operations. Welcome, gentlemen. Now, today, we will be taking a look at the new wave of data center capacity build-out, and with it, the billions of dollars of capital investment that is flowing at pace into the sector. Now, you may be wondering why we are discussing data centers, capital investments with a power and a natural gas expert. Well, the reality is that the sheer size and the pace of data center capacity development, certainly in the US, is starting to intensify energy demand growth, whilst also, I guess, placing some additional strains on what is already an aging electrical grid. So with that, Shane, before we really get into some of those trends that we're seeing, maybe you could just talk to us a little bit about the investments that we're seeing, and maybe start by defining where that infrastructure build-out is originating from an end user perspective.
Yeah, well, for many, many years, we've been tracking CapEx projects for data centers, and we've seen, for the most part, a lot of that investment taking place in the U.S., a little over 60%, but is really taken off in Europe and also in Southeast Asia. One of the big things that's changed for me in the last year is getting involved with data center coverage. We've been reporting on data center projects for many, many years. But we're in the answers age now, and our clients are asking questions that we need to be able to answer, and that's helping them forecast what the electric demand forecast looks like for data center development. So we've created a unit database, 1 unit per building phased, with a timeline in the units to allow our clients to visualize how this data center demand is going to grow from the standpoint of electric demand. And so from that, we're able to create several new views as part of our coverage.
So when you talk about the data sets that you and the team are researching, we're talking not about just the physical infrastructure that's being invested in, but also the power side. Can you just share a little bit about when you talk about the power demand? I guess there's two parts to that, correct?
It's been phenomenal. What we're looking at now is how is that data center going to connect to the grid, whether it be by electric utility, electric substation it's going to be connecting to, and lately, which natural gas pipeline is it going to connect to. And basically where data center development is gravitating towards is where can they get the energy that they need. Just in the past year, we've seen over 64 500 plus megawatt scale hyperscale data center campuses get announced. And very few of them are going to have the electricity they need from the electric grid. So now it's just all about how are they going to support themselves? Who's going to go in and build power plants next to these data centers? Are they going to put in behind the meter generation? And what types of technologies are they looking at each individual project to help not only our equipment and service providers, but also the energy traders, the companies that get involved in natural gas trading and sales, and just a whole host of new clientele that we're working with to assist on this product line.
Now, I've just shown here a kind of a heat map from our GeoExplorer, and that's based on the underlying projects that your collective teams are researching around the world. Of that 1.4 trillion or so of active capital investments that we can see here being tracked, there are obviously some noteworthy little kind of hotspots around the world, but clearly we can see that North America has the biggest pipeline of data center activity still at the planning and engineering stage, way bigger than any other region. Why is the US in particular being seen at the moment of the epicenter of some of this sort of investment? Why is it occurring in the US and not as much elsewhere?
Traditionally, a lot of the world's internet traffic flows right through the US. 50% of the world's internet traffic flows through Northern Virginia. And then from there, our government agencies use big data. And we've had, a huge build out for the last 20 years. And the big change that you see in that heat map from the standpoint of investment is that data centers have gone from 2 kilowatts per rack to 22 kilowatts per rack. So now 132 kilowatts per rack. And by 2027, the data centers that will be installing equipment there will be at 600 kilowatts per rack. The investment involved behind that, the rack costs have gone from $100,000 to $5 million per rack. And so there's almost $1 trillion worth of development taking place just in the U.S. alone because of that. And with AI and the training that's going on for AI, you've heard about OpenAI, Elon Musk's data center, the XAI, they're putting in power equipment themselves. Elon Musk's Memphis data center now has 35 gas turbines, and OpenAI is installing gas turbines out in Abilene, Texas. And they're already at five buildings under construction at this point. And so it's really just a different ball game now that we're looking at data centers with these types of rack sizes for training AI.
Now, Britt, like to lean into the whole power demand side of things.
Sure.
Clearly, what Shane's saying is look, there's a new wave of electricity demand coming. How are we going to meet that? I mean, what in terms of both the fuel type and also grid supply. Certainly in the US, when we're seeing this such incredible scaling of new capacity coming online, and traditionally you've talked for many years about this very urgent and critical need to upgrade the grid. How are we going to meet this?
Well, I mean, the need to update the grid was there prior to the data centers, and that only magnifies it, to be quite honest with you. The grid is very old, much of it over 40 years old in the United States. So those needs for infrastructure upgrade are still there. If we get down to the generation sources and the energy sources that will provide the electricity for this, it's going to have to be a variety of different sources and methods. Traditionally, the data centers have always touted the fact that they wanted to use renewable energy, and we're seeing that. For many years, we've seen solar farms and wind farms sign long-term power purchase agreements with some of the developers of these data centers for solar and wind energy. But solar and wind energy isn't going to get us there. It's going to take a variety of things, and I think right now the most obvious is natural gas, and we're seeing that across the country. All the major power providers, Entergy, I'll start with Entergy, has been very aggressive in building, is being very aggressive in building out new combined cycle facilities. We see other players, Vistra, Talon, Constellation, that are very aggressive in that market, and that's from the natural gas side. Apart from that, I believe that we're going to have to see more capacity from the nuclear providers as well.
Particularly the small modular reactors, they'll play.
Yeah, well, yeah. Okay. I mean, by and large, I believe it's going to be the small modular reactors, as you and I have talked about before. There are some conventional restarts of some of the conventional nuclear facilities as well. 3 Mile Island is one. Palisades up in Michigan is another one. There's talk of restarting the Duane Arnold facility in Iowa. And even in South Carolina, there's SCANA is out for bids for completing Unit 3 at the Sumner site that they had started construction on and backed away from because they didn't need the power demand. And ironically, now they do. And then I think there's other forms that we're seeing geothermal being developed for data centers. And last but not least, they're keeping coal plants operating longer to support data centers. And there's even some power purchase agreements being signed with coal plants.
Yeah, I mean,
which is quite odd. Yeah.
I think we saw, the Trump administration issue their Fast 41 permitting for specific mine development, and funnily enough, coal was on there, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So yeah, I guess you're going to have to locate the data center capacity where there is the provision of sufficient electricity.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're going to see some co-location. Maybe some direct connected facilities, do you think, Shane? Yeah.
Not every site is going to be able to pull from the grid 500 or a gigawatt, and now we're seeing sites that are, so many buildings that we're talking about 6 gigawatts worth of electricity demand, and the grid's just not going to be able to support that. And so we are seeing data centers being developed in combination with companies jumping in to build a power plant next door. Williams Company is building 2 power plants right now,
yes.
and Exxon and Chevron are jumping in.
Yes.
And we're also seeing data centers themselves that used to put in diesel generators now starting to look at natural gas-fired diesel technology generators as well, so they can run them more often than 150 or 200 hours a year, but also fuel cell technology. Fuel cells can later be adapted for hydrogen when that's ready, and they also produce a higher concentration of CO2, so data centers can put in natural gas fuel cell technology and install their own carbon capture technologies as well.
Right. So guys, this exponential growth in demand for electricity, surely this must be putting, I guess, pressure on some of those equipment OEMs to try and fulfill the kind of pace of demand for the power that is going into these data centers. Would that be correct?
Yes, very much so. All the major OEMs are experiencing orders for gas turbines we haven't seen since the last boom that we had, the last major build out of gas turbines across the country and globally, really. Recently, we saw the principals with Siemens, president of Siemens, state that in 2022 they booked 1 gas turbine order. Now they're backlogged. The CEO of GE Verona just recently mentioned that in the first quarter alone they booked 7 gigawatts of orders for gas turbines, raising their backlog to about 29 gigawatts. By and large, the delivery time on a gas turbine right now is 3 years. So it is placing a strain on the supply of gas turbines.
But there is more manufacturing capacity on the way. GE is spending $600 million on new manufacturing capability that will be coming online in a couple of years to help mitigate some of that.
I want to stay with the power piece for a little bit more. It's an important component of the growth of the sector. Can you just educate folks a little bit about the 2 sides of power demand? There's the kind of what you call the front of the meter, and then there's what's behind the meter, right? Could you just share a little bit about what that, those definitions?
Well, I mean, when we look at data center demand traditionally, it's demand that's hitting the grid. Behind the meter are data center developments that are planning on not pulling from the grid necessarily, but producing their own power on site without pulling from the grid, or only pulling from the grid when it's advantageous for the grid to supply power. So data centers are going to get all the renewable energy that they can get off the grid. And when it's not there to support them, they'll switch on their gas-fired generators or other technologies that they can deploy on site.
Okay.
And some of those are renewable energy sources like solar panels and battery storage to back it up as well. So
right.
we do see that taking place as well.
And hence your interest, as you said, you really can't have a conversation about your gas markets without factoring in the discussion about the data centers. Yeah. So clearly, I think one of you referenced the fact that data center operators and owners do have, and they are seeking out some of those alternative lower carbon lower carbon sources. But really, the reality of it is that we're going to lean probably more heavily on the gas side of things from generation.
I think certainly for the near term, I believe so.
This is why we're seeing data center development for large campuses taking place in the Haynesville and northern Louisiana. Britt had mentioned Entergy. They're building out these combined cycle power plants for Meta there. We're seeing in the Appalachia region, in Ohio and Pennsylvania, data centers being developed there, taking advantage of the Appalachian gas there that's stranded without enough takeaway capacity to keep growing that basin, which could easily grow. So there's going to be in-basin demand created by data center development there, and also in West Texas. I mean, there's a lot of pipeline companies that are chasing data center developers to supply them with the gas that they need.
Right, and Britt, you know, great intentions to try and add renewables to the mix, and that's happening across the market wholesale. Just stepping back a little bit with your power hat on, do you think that renewables, full stop, are coming online? Do you think they're coming online at a sufficient pace, not only to meet the increase in just general wholesale electricity demand, but now this sort of new kid on the block, this surge of demand coming from data centers? Do you think that we're moving forward? Now, I'm referencing specifically because we've seen a little bit of a challenge to new build offshore wind, correct?
Oh, absolutely. The new administration has put some constraints to offshore wind that I believe are going to be there during the duration of this term. So will they come online? Will renewable sources come online to supply data centers? Yeah, I believe so later down the line somewhat. There's constraints, other constraints that we haven't talked about, which is the backlog of the interconnect queues. These facilities gaining permission and approval to tie into the grid themselves, and there's so many of them. There's been such a wave of development of solar and battery developments that it's overwhelming the approval process for the independent system operators, the regional transmission organizations, and so that's really slowed down development somewhat of battery and solar, along with other issues we've talked about in the past, such as supply constraints and things like that. PJM, which is basically on the East Coast, recently made a move to move natural gas-fired applications for generation ahead of renewable, move the natural gas-fired applications to the forefront of that approval process. That's caused a little bit of a stir there, but they know that that's a reliable form of electricity for the data centers, natural gas-fired generation.
Yeah, I think after seeing wholesale power prices go up this summer by 800%, that changed the minds.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Right. Now, I want to discuss, I guess, the impact on data center construction and specifically go back to tariffs. We can't really have a conversation without touching on tariffs. Now, the current state, and this is a daily, constantly shifting picture.
Moving target.
It is a very much moving target. Semiconductor imports, the last time I looked, certainly off the back of the 2nd April Rose Garden announcement, semiconductor imports were kind of given something of an exemption, I think, but the reality of it is a number of the kind of semiconductors that do get imported are kind of wrapped up in sort of finished product or finished equipment, and they are actually being tariffed. So do we think that this is now quite a big issue or a big consideration for anybody, sitting with a data center project, still at the planning or engineering stage? Do you think that we may see some bottlenecks or some challenges or disruptions to the supply chain, certainly of some of this critical equipment that's required for moving these things forward?
There could be a rethink on timelines. Right now, we just don't have the clarity that we need. Not until July, when this is all settled. There's a lot of negotiations going on with existing trading partners. We don't know what's going to get worked out as far as tariffs are concerned in that matter. But my bigger concern is labor. I mean, you've got data center expansions that are requiring 3,000 personnel competing with power plant projects now at combined cycles that need a lot of labor as well, a lot of labor for semiconductors. So that might slow down some construction more from a labor standpoint than anything else. Right now, there's 16 gigawatts worth of data center under construction. We just reached a new milestone where we have over 30 gigawatts worth of data center capacity online, and that's just from 19 gigawatts just 3 years ago. So a tremendous amount is underway. I don't think we're going to see that same pace over the next several years. What we probably be more likely to see is 10 to 15 gigawatts of data center capacity built out each of the next 4 to 5 years. So we're not going to see the same pace that we're seeing that's taking place this year over the next 3 to 4 years, but it will still be a very fast pace of build out.
I mean, that's still a sizable, juggernaut coming through the system. Maybe if I could just keep you on the hook just for a little longer, I'd just love to have one final summary from each of you with your respective hats on as to what you want our end users and listeners today to kind of stay tuned to.
I would just say that there are some that would say that we're expecting a slowdown, that the boom might come to an end, but this is the world's gold rush right now, as Kevin O'Leary would say, who's developing his own 7,500 megawatt data center up in Ontario. We're in the answers age, and we're moving away from training AI on public data to millions of companies adopting AI to train AI on their intellectual property. This is just getting off the ground. The train has left the station. Plenty of development ahead of us. It's getting pretty exciting.
From a power perspective, I mean, it is exciting for me because we haven't seen growth in demand for electricity for a very long time. I believe over the next several years, we're going to see 3% per year in growth of demand, maybe even more. There's going to be pockets of the country where that's as high as 8%.
Historically, it's been around 1%.
Or less, yes.
And if you could go back to that slide that Britt just mentioned, that 2 to 3% per year. If you go back to the heat map, the 2 to 3% per year on the heat map of the U.S., that's not taking place evenly across the United States. There's hot spots where utility companies are seeing the greatest amount of demand growth that they've seen in a generation. So it's all hands on deck getting ready for that. And so that's why we are seeing combined cycle power projects finally get to the point where they can be green lighted.
Yeah. I think the big thing people are trying to wrap their head around right now is how much of this is real. We talked about the boom and the potential slowdown, and so there is uncertainty, certainly on the electricity demand side as well. But without a doubt, the growth is there, and I think that's going to continue for a while.
Great.
I think the stark realization is this is real, and we're behind on developing the power plants that we need to meet this demand.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. You guys love the topic. We can't stop you. But listen, if any of you who've tuned in have got any further questions that you'd like to put across to Shane or Britt, then please reach out to them directly. You can see their contact details there. All that leaves me to do now is say a very big thank you to everybody who's joined us. Thanks for joining the discussion. I hope we have helped you better navigate some of the currents of change we're seeing right now. Thank you.